saw her grooving in the ghettos of her life. No one saw her drying her clothes on a radiator overnight. No one saw her making rags into fashion or wiping tears from her daughter's eyes. Your daddy loves you, she says.
Tamarind is interesting. I was at home one day, I think it was a couple of summers ago, just walking in the neighborhood, and there was this woman wearing like shorts, like really short denim trousers, and she was just walking along the street. It was a bright summer's day, and all the men, all the men that were there was like a group of men that worked in like a bus depot, standing around, and they were just looking at her. Everyone was just looking at her, and there was an attitude in her walk. The way she was walking was like, yeah, I'm doing my thing. She was just doing her thing. There was a strength in her, and no one, called out to her. No one whistled at her. They just let her pass. And I thought, wow, that's the strength of that woman there. That's the essence, the power of that woman. So I started writing something. I think the poem that I came up with from that experience was kind of looking back towards poets from the 70s, Black American poets that would write about women in a very sexy way. I was thinking of a poem in particular by Eugene Redmond called All Attired in Black, in which he says, black women have ties that agonize eyes. So I was kind of going for that kind of vibe. And that was cool, and I did that poem, and it was great. And then, I don't know, something felt like it was missing. It was this, there was something that felt like it was missing. And what it was missing, I think, was the backstory. The real story of who this woman was, I mean, obviously I never actually met her, but I imagined her life. I imagined who she was. So I kind of tried to incorporate not just her being this sort of sexual being crossing a road, but what led her to that point, what gave her that strength, the things that we don't see. We see the walk, we see the swagger, but we don't see her life. We don't see her waking up at 5 a.m., as I say, to go and do a cleaning job, or we don't see her trying to comfort her daughter who's crying because her father is violent or whatever. We don't see these things. So I try to, I guess, make a whole composite picture of this woman. It's an attempt to create a picture of a woman. I think what Meshell does with Tamarind musically is really fascinating because, I told her what I was trying to do with the poem and how I was sort of looking back to poets from the 70s and the way they wrote about women, black women in particular. And I think she got that idea and she got the feeling and she came up with something that is got a flavor of sort of blaxploitation in there. And you could really hear that sort of early 70s Sly and the Family Stone kind of drum machine, the popping bass, the strings. It's, it's a gem. There's another really interesting thing about Tamarind. When I wrote the poem, Meshell asked me to send her an a cappella version of it. So that same night that I'd finished writing the poem, I just recorded it on my phone, and I sent her an MP3. And that became the guide vocal, of course, for the track. But when we were recording it and getting ready to do a proper vocal over the track, nothing sounded better than the recording from the phone. So we ended up using the recording directly from the phone. The recording that I just sat in my living room and just recorded lying on the sofa, that was the one that became the vocal track on that track, So it's fascinating how little accidents and things that you don't plan, come together and create something quite beautiful, Tamarind is a fruit that we find in Trinidad as well as in, I think, Asia, primarily. And it's sour, real sour taste to it, but a real sweetness to it as well. So it's a bittersweet tang, tamarind.
Everyone says she's beautiful. And in the midday when they ask for the summer soft, the children are playing in the streets, she lets the dark seed of her glow like tamarind